So I went to Best Buy and actually did some window shopping today. Got a chance to take a look at some of the video cameras, and I've got some great news. I do believe I have made my decision after having looked at several of them. Um, One of the things that really disappointed me, I will say, is a lot of the lower end video cameras, such as the Vixia HFR42 and R40, do not have any sort of manual control beyond program mode. And a lot of you are thinking, well, why should that matter? Well, you're talking to somebody who's coming from a Nikon D70, and I'm used to being able to have all that control in my photos, and I do have graphic design experience, so I'd like to have that same level of control in my videos. They did have this camera's lower end sibling, the G20, so I got to take a look at that, get a chance to see how it feels. Extremely solid. Very comfortable to hold. It is a little bit heavier than what you'd expect for a consumer video camera, but there are a number of reasons for it. Number one, much bigger sensor. Number two, more premium materials, because I mean, obviously you're paying around $1,000 for this. The G30, by the way, is a bit more expensive than that. There are a couple of reasons why I went with the G30, though. First of all, out of the box, it comes with a bigger battery, which is nice. You don't have to end up spending extra money on spare batteries. Number two is more versatility. More versatility in recording formats, more versatility in the manual control setup. This is the user's manual for the G30, and the camera has 5 separate assignable buttons. You can see we have 2 of them here, and we have 2 of them here on the display. And if we move up, we've got 1 of them or 2 of them there. So it's really, really nice to be able to have that control, just have a single button to access frequently used settings, and you don't have to go through the menus for anything. But also, if we take a look here at the Viewfinder, you can see that it flips up. The G20 does not do that, and you're probably thinking, well, why is that important? It's also, why it's important is another reason why I went with the G30 over the G20, and I'll explain that. First of all, I plan to use this not just as a video camera, but as a digital monocular. For those of you who have subscribed to me recently, take a look at my video, the Visible Video Telescope, for more details. But being able to flip up the viewfinder allows you to get a 45-degree angle, so that if there's a sign that's really high up, it's much easier to see. Plus, this has double the zoom of the G20. It's got 20 times optical zoom. That's one of the things I've noticed. I've noticed that a lot of the more consumer-friendly cameras that have less manual control tend to... Vast is updated. Tend to really pack in the zoom, and I can understand why, because a lot of people that are buying the lower end cameras are people that are, you know, parents who are who are taping their kids' soccer games or piano recitals or what have you, and they're not the sort of person who would take the time to set up a scene, adjust the exposure, adjust the various settings on the camera. I'm definitely not the average consumer. I have a lot of experience in various artistic mediums, graphic design. Back when I was little, I would draw a lot. But not being able to have that manual control, I looked at a lot of the cameras there today, and all of them resulted in having just a program mode, which is really just a way of saying fully automatic, except with just a few more settings. But you know, like I said, I'm coming from a digital SLR, so I'd like to have that same level of control. There's another reason I went with the G30 over the G20, though. Let's go back to this diagram. Not just the flip-up viewfinder. Let me zoom in to so I can see this better. This control stick. If you take a look here, there's the oblong button. You've got the control stick. Below that's the function button. We go back to the viewfinder. if I'm shooting completely in the viewfinder, one of the things that really irked me about, excuse me, the other higher end cameras is you can use the viewfinder, but then if you want to go and make adjustments to settings that would require the menu system, you have to take your eye away from the viewfinder and utilize the touchscreen. Well, if you're out and about, number one, I'm glare sensitive, so I'd have a hard time seeing the touchscreen in very bright sunlight, but also having to adjust to the light consistently. Also on top of that, Canon's Vixia HFR40 on display, which was the only one working, the screen was the best out of all of them, but none of them were up to the level of a smartphone. They just felt kind of clunky. Now, the buttons that were nice big squares I could deal with just fine, but there were some really small sort of rectangular buttons that, because of my depth perception, for those of you who do not know, I do not have 3D vision. I cannot see it all out of my right eye, so that really messes with my depth perception. As a result, with smaller icon buttons, I have a problem dealing with those in terms of getting spot on, and sometimes it takes me a few taps to get it. I can see that adding up to frustration over time. But no, so basically, the G30 isn't even out yet. I'm looking at this as sort of a graduation gift, possibly. We'll just see what happens. I'm supposed to be done with my thesis this summer, and that should be the July-August timeframe. That should give this camera plenty of time to get out to the media, get some reviews of it. But I've seen the G20. It is very solid, but there are just some things that I didn't care for about it, mainly having to do with the flexibility of the file formats, and also the zoom. I just like the idea of having that 20 times optical zoom, because that way it's practically limitless, you know, for monocular applications or for distance shots as a video camera. Speaking of a video camera, there is one more reason. The G20 has 32 gigabytes of built-in memory. The G30 has no built-in memory. The best part about that is, if I'm using this as a monocular and I don't intend on recording, I can just keep the SD cards out of the camera. This camera does have 2 SD card slots. If we can take a look right there, we can see there. Let me just make sure my arrow's in the right place. Yeah, it is. These 2 SD card slots, which is beautiful because of relay recording. You can record to slot A, and if your relative wants a copy, you can record to slot B at the exact same time, and you can immediately give them their card back, and you won't have to worry about mailing them the footage, emailing, compressing, none of that. You can just give them that second card. But the fact that it doesn't have internal memory, like I said, is a plus, because having both of these slots empty and not being able to record, if anybody asks, I can just say, I'm not able to record anything. Take a look, see for yourself. And I can explain to them what I'm doing, and that way anybody who's wondering, because I've said this before, and I'm not going to get into a real rant about it, or I'm not going to get on my soapbox, but I will say this. Using a video camera as a monocular does have certain advantages. It's a lot more flexible. You get a much better field of view. I'm not going to, like I said, I'm not going to bother going into any more detail. I've already covered that extensively. But no, so that's the advantage of not having internal built-in memory. The other advantage is, if your internal memory gets corrupted for whatever reason, and you're not able to transfer your memories, it just seems to me like, rather than having to fuss with the cables, it'd just be easier just to go with SD in the first place. The only thing that I have a question about regarding this camera is the onboard wireless. Now, I do not intend to make full use of this, but I'm just curious if anybody feels that it's a novelty or if it's a feature. I just feel it's a bit of a novelty. Oh, there's one more thing. Neither the G20 or the G30 have built-in video lights, but the G30 does have, in addition to the miniature accessory shoe that's also on the G20, the G30 has a built-in hot shoe, and that actually opens up for a lot more choice in terms of accessories, video lights, additional microphones, that sort of thing. One of the things that I do like about this camera's design is all of the major ports. Oops, I went too far. Let's see, I have to go back down. Right here. All of the camera's major ports, we've got headphone, microphone, USB, HDMI, and a remote port, are all located behind this flap here on the front. With the G20, they're kind of spread out all over the place, which, I don't know, to me it just seems like that's just awkward. I mean, the G20's HDMI port is down here under the strap, which it just makes more sense to me to have all the major ports here on one side of the camera. They can certainly be under two different flaps, but having it on one side of the camera, I just think it makes a lot more sense. But no, so basically, as to when I'll get it, no idea. But I've read the information. I've gone through this manual several times, because one of the things that I'm doing in addition to seeing the product in person nowadays is reading the manual before I buy it. If I can read the manual and take a look and see how to use it and discover any features that may or may not work, you know, that's definitely a plus. But no, so basically I have decided on the G30. But what do you guys think? Worthwhile? Yes? No? Maybe so? The other thing to keep in mind is what I'm upgrading from. Because what I'm upgrading from is the JVC GR-D70U, and that video camera is 8 years old. It is not high definition. It does not have an HDMI out, obviously. It records to these mini DV video cassettes that at most will hold an hour and a half. The screen's a 4:3 ratio, only 2.5 inch versus 3.5 inch widescreen on the G30. It does have a viewfinder, but it's black and white, and it's very cumbersome to utilize, only because the light doesn't stay in one place. That's the other thing. This camera has an OLED screen, and I believe an OLED viewfinder versus an LCD, where the lighting can be kind of just have a mind of its own. But no, keep in mind what I'm upgrading from, and take that into account when I ask, and when I do ask, what do you guys think? Yes, no, maybe so. Take into account what I've said in this video. Think I've made a good choice, bad choice? Am I crazy? Thank you for watching. Comments are welcome, and have a nice day.